Hey, blessed day, everyone. Today's January 13th, and it is day 2 of our Warrior Goddess Anti-Resolution Challenge. I've been going live just to check in and share a little bit about challenge and hear your questions. Good morning, Doe. So as you tune in, go ahead and share in the chat wherever you're tuning in from. Your name would be great, and maybe even where you're tuning in from. I'm broadcasting to five different pages right now. So hi, whether you're watching this recording, live, video later, live right now. We're recording to my Heather Ash page, my Heather Ash Facebook author page, the Warrior Goddess Women group, and YouTube, and the Warrior Goddess Inspiration. Tuning in from Salem, Oregon. Yay, Doreen. Glad that you're here. Hey. Yeah, so as we just step in together today, we're in day 2 of the Warrior Goddess 7-Day Anti-Resolution Challenge. If you haven't joined yet, it's www.antiresolutionchallenge.com. Super easy to join, free, 7 days, and you'll get the video from yesterday as well. So you can join really anytime and do it at your own pace. So, okay, bye-bye, Figo. No, we don't do that. So, boop. If you guys start spamming, deleting, and blocking. Hey, Trish, good to see you. All right, so that's gone. Good. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. So the anti-resolution challenge today, the question is around compassion, an exercise in compassion. And how do we bring more compassion to ourselves as we get clear about what our strategy has been? So again, if you haven't joined the anti-resolution challenge, you can join at any time. Started yesterday. Today's day 2, and we'll go through the 18th. This is a 7-day challenge. Antiresolutionchallenge.com. Super easy to join. Just stick your email in and plus return. And if you are part of the challenge already, I'm starting to get warm now. If you're part of the challenge already, yay! I'd love to hear how the video was today. If you've watched it, if you haven't, no problem. Good morning, Carrie. Hey, Marianne. So our exploration yesterday was around this idea of strategies, where we have taken on strategies, especially over the last couple of years, that aren't serving us. And those 4 strategies that we're working with, hey, Martin. Oh, my teatro. Good to see you here, babe. Those 4 strategies are distractor, isolator, pleaser, and controller, and no particular order. A lot of people wrote in. I spent a couple hours last night on the Warrior Goddess Women group, which is where we're interacting around the challenge. And a lot of people were sharing how they felt like they had all 4 of the strategies, or that they realized that they were one strategy that was backed up by another. So it's totally fine if you recognize yourself in all the strategies, because a lot of times we do. We see places where in certain areas of our life we're distracting, in certain areas of our life we're isolating, in other areas we're controlling, in other areas we're pleasing. And if you keep watching yourself and exploring, probably asking your friends, honestly, people that are close to you, you'll get a sense of what strategy you're using much of the time, or that's more your dominant strategy. And what I say is, just for this challenge, just pick one strategy that you want to work with, and use it throughout these 7 days to go deeper. And then that'll give you information on your other strategies as well. Yeah, I think we all resonate with all of them at some degree. And there's one that you're probably more dominant with, or maybe that's more problematic right now, that you see that you're really struggling with more than the others. So pick one that you want to work with. And it's really important that as we learn about strategies and ways that we're coping, that we bring in compassion for ourselves. And that's the focus of today. Day 2 is around bringing in compassion. And I found, no worries, RC, your timing is perfect. So there's no right way to start. Yeah. So if you're just joining us now, welcome. Day 2, you can sign yourself up. You'll get the video from yesterday. The videos are about 10-minute. They're short videos. There's a worksheet. So yesterday the worksheet was helping to figure out what your strategy are. Today we're exploring a really great way to bring ourselves back into compassion, which is to look at someone you really love and look at what their strategy might be. And I found that when we step back and get out of our own relationship with our wounding, our hurt, our suffering, and when we let go of thinking this is who I am, when we identify as I am a pleaser or am a controller, and just realize that there's pleasing strategy that you have, that you are a whole human, that you're not broken, and you've taken on a strategy to help you navigate. And we can sometimes more easily find that compassion when we look at others. Hey, Marina. Hey, Heather. Yay. Italy, I love it. So how would bringing in compassion help us? Good question, Sakina. It helps us because instead of then identifying as the strategy and beating ourselves up, a lot of us punish ourselves. We get more insight and information about ourselves. And then instead of having compassion and really looking at where the strategy came from or why we would have developed it, we usually often, not all the time, but often go into then feeling bad, thinking we shouldn't be doing it. And I say this all the time, where people become aware of a pattern or habit. I do this still. I'm sure some of you have recognized this pattern where you realize, oh, I'm a pleaser. And then the next time you watch yourself pleasing someone or going into that pattern, then the tendency is to then beat ourselves up and say, I should know better. I know that I'm a pleaser. Why am I pleasing? Okay, but the awareness, having the awareness around something does not equal having the capacity to change it. Having the capacity to change it is you need tools, you need support, and sometimes you're able to shift the pattern right away. But a lot of times with these strategies, you have to remember we're using the strategy to give ourselves the feeling sense of safety. So there's a lot woven into that. There's a lot of other agreements and beliefs. So when we start to have compassion for ourselves, we can understand there's a reason I'm doing this. There's a reason that I'm wired to control or please or isolate or distract. And that the compassion allows us to then go deeper, to ask more questions, to get more curious about why, rather than I shouldn't. And I think compassion also helps us ask better questions of ourselves. When we're in that judge or victim or thinking I shouldn't be having this pattern, I should know better now that I'm aware of it, the question or the commentary to ourselves is often then, why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? Compassion helps us to say, all right, why am I doing this? It might even be the same question, but the energy and the attitude behind it changes. Yeah, and exactly, Catherine. That's something that we'll be talking about as we move deeper into the challenge. Is not always a bad thing to please, control, or isolate. We're not saying it's good or bad. We're looking at, and this is something we'll be exploring, is what are the benefits? What are the benefits of those strategies? Because there's a reason that we're using them. Okay, they've kept us safe up till now, and there's also a cost. So to also look at what's the cost, to be honest of it. And that really helps. You're so right, Catherine. When we step out of this is good or bad or right or wrong, it just is something that we're doing. And sometimes it has benefit. There's a reason. So when we name both the benefit and the cost, that helps us to make changes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Doreen writes, I'm very good. I believe in having compassion for others. And when it comes to myself, not so much compassion. Yeah. So this is a skill set that we're learning, and how we can learn to bring that skill set to ourselves, to bring ourselves more compassion, is to look at who are we compassionate towards? Who do we already have that compassion built in? And that may be your grandchild. It may be your brother. It may be a dear, dear friend to you, that you recognize you already have a soft, loving place in your heart for them. You have compassion. You're able to hold all of them, that you're not judging or victimizing or feeling they should be doing it differently, that you're like, yeah, there's a reason they're taking the actions they're taking. So we start there. Where do you already have compassion built in? Where are you already owning your compassion towards probably someone in your life? And then how do you then cultivate the skill of compassion with yourself? Because it takes practice. And if you don't have compassion with yourself, if you've noticed that you've been beating yourself up or judging yourself or feeling victimized or ashamed or guilty or frustrated or angry or confused, to acknowledge. And can you bring awareness that you're not that one thing? You're not your strategy. You're a human that has a strategy. It's different. You can have compassion for the human and where you developed, where you first got the strategy, where you picked it up. And maybe you picked it up from someone else. Maybe you picked it up because you realized it worked. But having compassion helps you to step back and see, oh, that means I can also put this down as well. Good morning, time. Yeah, Heather writes, I'm a pleaser. Sophia, I'm working on my heart space and forgiving self. Today's measure of compassion was perfect. Good. I'm so glad. Yeah. Elaine, I freeze with communication when there's conflict, then think about it all night. Yeah. And know that those protective reactions of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, when we freeze, then we don't take action. And that, again, we're trying to keep ourselves safe and keep ourselves in. And that's a form, I see it as a form of isolating. And here's a recommendation. Can you have compassion for the freeze? Can you go into communication with the part of you that freezes, with the part of you that isolates, with the part of you that pleases, whatever it is? And instead of thinking about the conflict, can you befriend the freeze and start to be compassionate towards that part of you that's freezing and really open up conversation and dialogue? Hey, sweetheart. Hey, the part of me that freezes. How are you? And learn more about it. Because often the thinking about it all night is that I should have done it differently. Why am I like this? If only I was brave, I would have done this. And we can use anything against ourselves. One of the ways that I often start the warrior goddess workshops that we do throughout the year is to explore where the place that we're using, even something like, if I was a good warrior goddess, I would da 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 da. And we have usually amazing skill sets at using things against ourselves. So yeah, gentle. And the exploring, the curiosity will help to unwind it. And there's other tools that we can also bring in to help us experiment and try new things. So we'll talk about some of those in the days to come. Sakina, the cost. The cost is what is the suffering that it creates. So when you think of the cost of something, cost is how much something is, what's the exchange. So let's say the cost for a cup of coffee, let's say. So if I go someplace to buy a cup of coffee and they say $3, then I pay $3, okay? But that $3 is not just money. That $3 is a representation of the energy that I had to put someplace to create that $3 to exchange for the coffee. So with all of our strategies, there's benefits, there's gifts, there's things that support us with the strategy, but there's also energy being exchanged. There's a cost for the strategy. And when we're honest about both the benefit and the cost, how much energy it's taking, how much life force, how much staying up all night thinking about it is it costing, whatever it is, then that gives us more insight, information, and energy to create shift. Yeah. Catherine, when is appropriate or not appropriate is not always easy to decipher. So yeah, it's a skill set, exactly. Yeah, Doreen, I've been struggling with my old patterns and behaviors. I'm trying to move from place of reacting less emotionally because I get triggered easily and I'm not even sure why. Yeah, it does. It gets ingrained in the body. And so that's where compassion's really helpful. is you get triggered, and instead of then piling on, I shouldn't be triggered, I should know better, it's their fault that I'm triggered, I'm never gonna fix myself because I'm always triggered. If instead we can hand on heart, hand on belly, hi trigger, hi, I'm triggered, okay, breathe. And sometimes you're not gonna even figure out why you're triggered, but can you bring your compassion to triggered? And where do you feel it in your body? And just to be with the feeling sense rather than running away from it. And it doesn't mean, I always talk about this, that we have to separate out the story from the emotion. The story is the reason we think we're triggered, which may or may not be true. And the feeling is what the response is in your body. And often we create a story immediately so that we don't have to feel the feeling. So if you can refrain from telling whatever the story might be and just come back into, hi, sweetheart, there's compassion right there. And that starts to shift your relationship with yourself so you can start being self-soothing and present and curious rather than judgmental. Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. And that's it, learning how to witness. Learning how to witness. Mm-hmm. Good morning, Carol. Hey, Bantanova, welcome. Let's see who else is here. Nice. Yeah, great. Eileen, let us know how it goes. So I'm doing these live broadcasts every day at this time, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, 5 p.m. London. Yeah, so, and we're doing it for the next 6 days as we go through the Warrior Goddess Anti-Resolution Challenge. Everyone is welcome. Doesn't matter what gender you are, everyone's welcome. For those of you that are part of the Anti-Resolution Challenge, day 2 was in your inbox earlier today. So if you haven't seen it, you can do a search in your inbox for Anti-Resolution Challenge, and day 2 should pop up. They're 10-minute videos and a worksheet. For those of you that haven't joined the challenge that want to, we are currently at 4,953 people signed up for the challenge. So we're almost up to 5,000 people signed up for this challenge, which is so exciting. So you can join anytime, www.antiresolutionchallenge.com. Super easy, email, click, and you're in. You'll get an email right away with today's video and a link also to yesterday's video as well. You can join anytime. Catherine, I really struggle with my adult kids who were taught by their father it was my job to do everything for them, no chores, etc. As a single mom now, they can help. They can be adults and do more for themselves. Compassion for myself for being unable to do everything. I'm a good mom still. Of course you're a good mom. Even if you don't do anything, I'm going to finish that sentence. Even if you don't do everything, because as a human, as a mother, as a being, you can't do everything, and it's not your role or job. And so it's not so much what your kids were taught by their father, it's more what you've taught them by your actions and what you believe that you're unraveling. So may you continue to unravel those old stories that you created that so many of us have, that in order to be good, we have to be perfect. We have to do everything. We have to take care of everything. We can't. And your actions don't equate with being good. Your being is good. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to prove yourself. This is, again, is where the compassion comes in, of just the hurt that we've caused ourselves by places where we say, you have to be good in this way, instead of really just recognizing our original goodness. It's part of this incarnation. Yeah. So, yeah. And compassion for thinking that you're supposed to do everything. Yeah, your being is good. And exactly. So Carol writes, refraining from the story, and that takes practice. I'm in the process of writing a simplified version of my last book, which was called The Warrior Heart Practice, which was about a method, a very specific method to separate out feeling from story, to create more space. And often those are tangled together, that the feeling and the story are one blob, and we want to untangle so that we can start to be more in relationship with what's the feeling versus what's the story. Just takes practice. Okay, and we'll be sharing more tools through the anti-resolution challenge. So every day I'm building on the challenge and adding more pieces and tools and more lenses of how to look at your strategy, how to get more and more curious about it, how to start to untangle it. And this is a big piece of just looking at what's the story that you're telling yourself, and can you bring more compassion into your relationship with self? Yeah, Caroline, transitioning from parenting children to adults, super challenging time. Yeah. My dear friend Miguel Ruiz Jr. Shares, we wrote a book together called The 7 Secrets of Happy and Healthy Relationships. And he talks about being a parent and how, your kids too, and then you finally start to understand how to parent a 2-year-old and get settled in it. And then they turn 3 and everything changes. So yeah, the thought, and I've also talked to parents, I'm not a parent myself, but I've talked to plenty of parents who were like, I thought when they were 18, it would be easier, like when they went off on their own, but there's still a lot to untangle in our relationship with kids, our kids, other people's kids. Yeah, it is. So blessings to all of you that are in transitions with your children, with your relationships, with your work. All of us are in some transition, and to bring compassion into the transitions is also incredibly helpful and healing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sakina, rewire your being. All right. I love this. So here's one of the first ways this was explained to me, is that we each create agreements and beliefs and these old structures in our being that get tangled. Okay, so if you think about tangle, like when you're brushing your hair, you know how your hair gets those knots in it? That those knots, what we often do is we want to like pull them out, like make them go away. But the truth is, the way to untangle a knot in your hair where your hair's tangled is gentle, to undo it, to have the compassion and to gently brush it out. And this idea of rewiring your being is a similar thing, that we're untangling, that we're brushing out the places where we have agreements and beliefs that have gotten knotted together, that don't serve us. So for example, the places where I believe that I'm only good if the rewire or the untangling is what's actually true, and the realization that I don't have to do anything to be good, to prove myself as good. I can look at my actions and be responsible for my actions and my reactions, and bring in more compassion. And so the places that we react, that we learn to respond. Okay. And the term rewiring is a what's the right euphemism? Well, we'll just use it as a metaphor. I can't think of that word right now. But when you like rewire a house, if the electrical system is old, what happens in houses with electrical systems, so the electricity that turns on your lights, for example, when you have old wiring, the wiring can get crossed and burn itself out. The wiring can cause fires. There's all sorts of problems with old wiring. And so the idea of rewiring is putting in new wiring so that the electricity runs better. So that's how I love that image of that. We're rewiring our energetic, emotional system so that we're increasing our capacity, increasing our resistance, or our resiliency, and opening up new choices. The old wiring is usually based in judgment and fear. So the new wiring, we want it to be based in compassion and presence and curiosity. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Catherine, others' expectations and our expectations, the cause of all misery. Yeah. So much the expectation is definitely a cause for suffering. I expect myself to be here. I expect others to be here. And there's a difference between, I always talk about the difference between discernment and judgment. So judgment, when judgment is in the expectation, what gets wired in is you should. And just feel the energy of you should, the places we do that to ourselves. You should be better. You shouldn't be triggered. You shouldn't be pleasing others. You should, the should and the shouldn'ts. You've done so much work. You shouldn't be having these same reactions. But the truth is, you are. And so instead of putting the shoulds all over the place and that expectation of where we should be, and whenever we do that, we abandon ourselves. That's a form of abandonment. The expectations are a form of abandonment, of not being in relationship to what actually is, where we are or where others are. And the difference between discernment and judgment, for example, judgment is the you should. Discernment is clearly seeing what's happening and making a decision based on the information that you have. So discernment might say, I need to make a boundary here. I want to change my relationship. This isn't working for me. There's not a lot of story. Okay. And the same thing with the expectations. Can we discern? It may be you want to change something or a relationship isn't working for you. And to have the discernment to make a new choice without having to bring in a lot of story or punishment or victimization. And if you are, to be gentle with yourself. I found that where my healing really started to root into my being more was when I was able, when I went into judgment or victimization, instead of judging myself for feeling victimized, instead of punishing myself for being triggered, to be able to stay with myself, to not abandon myself, to be curious. Oh, I'm triggered. What's happening? That shifted everything. So that's for me what this lesson is today, is starting to seed compassion in our being, so that compassion takes root instead of judgment, instead of feeling victimized all the time, instead of making ourselves wrong. Compassion doesn't mean that we don't take action or we become passive. It means that where our actions are coming from is a much more healing place. Mm-hmm. Mary, I've reacted a lot these last 2 years, and I see where my inner child is in fear. Mm-hmm. How do you move on those fear moments that are real? Yeah, well, the capacity, and hi, Mary, the witnessing, as you know, is first step of opening to hold that inner child, the part of you that's scared, the part of you that's freezing or fawning or fleeing or fighting, okay? Or to look at the strategies, the part of you that's controlling or pleasing or isolating or distracting. And to be able to acknowledge the fear. I think sometimes what we do with fear, especially fear that's coming up from an old place, that's fear from the past, that's still in our bodies, is that the fear starts arising, and because we don't want to feel it and we don't understand where it's coming from because it doesn't seem connected to the present, is we just push it back down again. And it compounds the fear because now we're not listening to the fear or to that part of ourselves that has fear. So that compassion to turn towards the part of us that are afraid in this example, and give yourself permission to have the fear without the story, and to be with, where's the fear in my body? You don't have to understand where the fear is coming from, but there's a way of befriending the fear so that you're not ignoring it or pushing it down, and you're not exaggerating it. Acknowledge, compassion. And then where do you want to put your attention? Okay, so it's not staying in the fear, but it's also not ignoring the fear. Feel it. Acknowledge, notice where it's in the body. And then what does the fear need in order to be soothed? What is that inner part of you, that inner child or inner aspect? What compassion does it need? And sometimes that's really physical. Sometimes when I have fear and I'm it's in my body and I may have a reason for the fear out here, and I also recognize something inside of me has gotten triggered, I'll go literally like wrap myself in a blanket and put things over my head and just talk to myself. You're safe right now, sweetheart. It's all okay. And there's fear present here. Or other times I'll be like, oh, I need a dance party. I need to actually move this out of my body. What music can I put on that will help me to be in relationship with this and know that it's not about the present and I'm not pushing it back down. I'm actually moving it out. So such a great question, Mary. I hope that helps a wee bit, and that anybody that's listening, that you got some peace about your own fear or any other emotion that you're navigating. Catherine, we get confused about what is false. Yes, should and shouldn't. So need to have compassion, be gentle, and untangle the expectations. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Sakina, what do you mean by spawn? I don't think I used the word spawn, so I'm wondering what translation word came through. So I'm not sure. If you can put it in context with the sentence, I can see if I can go back and grab it. Yeah. So, love you all, sweethearts. I'm so grateful to get to do these live broadcasts with you. Again, if you're not part of the Anti-Resolution Challenge, it runs the 12th through the 18th. We're in day 2. You can start anytime at all. So if you happen to be watching this video 3 days from now, still go join the challenge. www.antiresolutionchallenge.com. I'll go put it in the chat. And if you're part of the challenge, today's focus is on compassion. I'd love to hear, we'll close in just a minute, but I'd love to hear what was your relationship, or what's your relationship with compassion? What did you learn today? So just one share would be great before we close today. I'll do another broadcast tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, 5 p.m. British time. But I'd love to hear any thoughts, responses about compassion, our topic for today. And tomorrow, I can tell you where we're going tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going towards the blessings. What are the blessings? What are the gifts of the strategy? How has it been beneficial? And the day after that, we're going into the shadow. We're going into the suffering. So yeah, beautiful. Thank you. To hold my fears in compassion. Yeah. May we all practice compassion for self. Lots to think about today, Carolyn writes. Thank you so much. Loving the challenge. I will be employing compassion today with my partner. Beautiful. And person that wrote to hold my fears in compassion. Hi, it just says Facebook user, so I'm not using your name. Catherine, thank you. Appreciate this. Not sure how I got here, but useful. Good. Glad that you made it here. Thank you. You're welcome, Heather. I've learned that having a compassion for my mom, I was able to forgive her for how she coped with her life. That's phenomenal. Yeah. Giving my inner child a big hug. I love it. Yeah. And Barb just sent a request to join the Facebook group. Responding with compassion would diffuse a whole lot of conflict situations. Beautiful. And the world would be a better place. Yeah. And it starts with us. And again, be compassionate towards yourself for the places that you're judging, that you're feeling victimized, that you're stuck in your strategy, because that's going to be part of the unwind. Is instead of putting more judgment and more pressure and more expectation and more anger on top of the strategy, that we're going to bring underneath it compassion to witness and to be honest about our actions and response. So for those of you that are part of the Anti-Resolution Challenge, we are engaging on the Warrior Goddess Women Facebook group. So some of you are watching from there, hey, but I'm going in and answering questions or saying hey to people. So if you want to share more about your experience with compassion or ask questions, please go on over to the Warrior Goddess Woman Facebook group, and I'll go in and accept your request bar. We've been doing it as fast as we can, but we've had a lot of people joining, which is great. So yeah, exactly, Sherry. It's so different to have compassion for self, easy for others. Yeah, exactly. All right, sweets. Thanks for joining me today. Again, I'll be back tomorrow for another live. Okay, so Janetta, I received an initial email, but haven't received any others with worksheets. Would love to participate. Do a search in your inbox. So if you've already joined and you're not getting the emails or the worksheets, do a search for Anti-Resolution Challenge, because I bet it'll pull it up. It probably got put into your spam. Even if you got day 1, sometimes day 2 gets put into spam. It's just the email thing. So check that out. Somebody's watching, Barb, that put you in probably. Why can I not comment on the live video? I see your comment now, whoever just wrote that at 12:37. Sometimes for those of you that are on YouTube or Facebook, because I'm using a streaming platform, it doesn't come through right away. So just so you know. Yeah, you're welcome, Wendy. Yeah, so, and the worksheets are in the emails. And also when you go to the antiresolutionchallenge.com/live is where those live. So sign yourself up if you haven't, antiresolutionchallenge.com. If you're not getting the emails and you have signed up, do a search. If you still don't see it, email us. hello@warriorgoddess.com. The team, Serena, Rachel, will help to make sure that you're getting the emails. We can see the back end and see if they've been sent or not. All right. Have a sweet day, dear ones. Take good care, and we'll see you tomorrow or whenever. Bye-bye.